Hey everyone, my name is Pastor Paul. Good to be with you today. I just want to share with you some encouraging words. On Sunday we talked a little bit about there's no perfect people in church. And I'm really glad about that because if the only perfect people go to church, I couldn't go. And so, wow, we've got imperfect people. And we understand that, but we are still, imperfect as we are, doing our best to live for Jesus. But what happens in the case where we see people, or we think we see people, that aren't doing their best? Maybe we even know people are working the opposite of what God wants and false teaching, all the things. What are we supposed to do about that? Well, we talked a little bit about Sunday, about the parable that Jesus told of the weeds. Why don't we look just a little bit more into that? I want to read for you the whole parable. You can find it in Matthew 13, verse 24. It says, another parable that he was forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed a good seed in his field, but while he slept, his enemy came in and sowed tares among the wheat and went on his way. And when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, and the tares also appeared. And his servants, the owner, came to and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in the field? How is it that there are tares? He said to them, an enemy has done this. And the servant said to him, do you want us to go and gather them up? But he said, no, lest you gather up with the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let them both grow together until the harvest. And at that time, the harvest, we will say to the reapers, first gather together the tares and bind them in the bundles and burn them up, and then put the wheat in the barn. So we'll have to understand that the tares they're talking about were something called bearded darnel. They looked a lot like a straw when they first started to sprout. In fact, the wheat would sprout first and would mature first, and then the tares. So you wouldn't be able to discover it was a wheat until after the wheat was already there. But once you discovered that, if you pulled out the tare, you would uproot the wheat as well, because the weeds had already intertwined amongst the roots of the wheat. And so it was impossible to pull out the weeds without pulling up some of the wheat at the same time. So the bearded darnel was always taken out and separated at harvest time. The reason for that was it was slightly poisonous, had a narcotic effect to it that would create dizziness and sickness. Now you might think, well, hey, come on, who plants weeds in somebody's field? Well, actually, that was so common that there was a Roman law against it. And if you were caught planting weeds in somebody's field, you could be charged with a crime. And so it was something that happened. And so what he said, and Jesus said, and talked to him, and so he told this story. And then later on, the disciples came to Jesus and said, well, what are you talking about? What does this mean to us? So looking down in Matthew 13, verse 36, then he said, left the crowd and went to the house, and his disciples came to him and said, explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field. He answered, the one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. So it's pretty straightforward so far. The person that plants the good seed is Jesus. That makes sense. Okay, let's go on. Verse 38. It says, the field is the world. The good seed, and it stands for the sons of the kingdom. So here we are. The field is a world. Okay, that's pretty obvious, makes sense. The sons of the kingdom, those would be Christians, people who follow Jesus, people who are disciples of Jesus. The weeds are the sons of the evil one. So sons of the evil one, how do we easily define that? Those are anybody who does not follow Jesus or have not given their life to him. And so you're going the opposite. So the world is a field. The good seed represents Christians. By Christians, we mean those who believe in and follow Jesus, that are disciples of him. And so the weeds are those who work for the devil, either knowingly or unknowingly against God. Today you might have a person say to you, well, I don't believe in God or serve God, but I don't believe in or serve the devil either. Well, Matthew chapter 12, verse 30 says this: he who is not with me is against me. This is Jesus saying this. He who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters. Jesus is saying, if you're not for me, you're against me. There is no middle ground. You just can't say, I got my own island to myself. It doesn't work that way. If you're either on Jesus' team or you're not. So where are the weeds that we're looking for in the world? Certainly we wouldn't find those in the church. Years ago, I had a friend of mine talk to me that he had done some counseling with a person who had come out of the Satanic Church. And this person told him that there was people from the Satanic Church that had infiltrated churches and were attending churches in that city and actually were trying to be part of the leadership teams. Now, there's a case where, wow, there's somebody that's knowingly working for the devil. But there's also times when there's those that are not knowingly working for the devil. Well, how do you do that? Well, people that gossip, backbite, dissension, envy, unforgiveness, all those things, of bitterness, it could be greed, hatred, anything like that at all is things that are working for the devil, creating dissensions, are opposite of what God says to do in his word. So in Matthew 13, verse 39, and the enemy who sows is the devil. See, you have to understand, the devil wants to infiltrate churches, believers, groups of believers, maybe not even church buildings where people attend, just groups of believers in small groups, life groups in different areas. He just wants to infiltrate those and create havoc, destroy the good seed. By the church, not just Broadway, anybody who calls himself Christians. Remember, the nature of the weed is it's hard to tell the difference between the weeds and the wheat. Some may appear to be good, but actually be bad. Some may appear to be bad, but actually be good. In fact, it's possible that some may start out bad. We look at them and say, whoa, and then God touched their life and they end up good. I like this one quote that I heard. It says, no one who knows only part of a man's life can judge the whole man. We don't know what's in a person's heart. Only God does. Matthew chapter 13, verse 28. So the farmer said, the enemy did this. He replied. But the servants asked him, do you want us to go and pull them up? Do you want us to pull up the weeds? How many times have we been like those servants saying, hey, Jesus, guess what? I see some things going on in the church that aren't good, or I think some people that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. Hey, let me go pull them up. Let me go correct that. Let me go fix that. We like to clean up other people's lives, don't we? You know something? Not our job. Matthew chapter 13, verse 29, it says, no, he answered, because while you pull up the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Jesus says, don't go around pulling up weeds. Don't try to fix everything or correct everything because you might pull up the good with the not good. And you can't even distinguish sometimes what's good and what's not good. See, removing the weeds in the church is not our job. It's Jesus' job. And we can do more damage than good. Does that mean we shouldn't do or say anything when somebody is getting into sin or falling away from Jesus? Absolutely not. But our role is to correct and encourage someone. And to do right. And to go the right way. Not to write them off or throw them away. In Matthew chapter 13, verse 39, it says, the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is at the end of the age, and the harvesters are the angels. See, the angels are the ones who will separate the good from the bad. They're going to do that at the end of the age. That's the time when everything's going to stop. The world as we know it, Jesus, that's a whole nother, maybe it's a whole nother devotional session. We'll talk about the end time events and all those kind of things. But at the end of the age, they're going to separate it, and they're going to be judged, everybody be judged for what they did on earth, whether good or bad. What happens to the weeds? Well, when we pull out weeds in our garden or our lawn, what happens to them, we put them in yard waste bags, and we put them at the end of the curb, and some guy comes, often when we're not home, and picks them up, and they're gone. It was a lot different back in Jesus' time. In Matthew chapter 13, verse 40, as the weeds are pulled up and burned, the Son of, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will pick out the weeds from his kingdom, everything that causes sin, and all who do evil. And they will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, and then their righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father, who has ears, let him hear. See, the weeds are all those who are rebel against God, that don't listen to God, don't obey God, don't have a relationship with Jesus. They're going to be taken, gathered up, and thrown into the fiery furnace, hell, to be burned forever. Not a very good thing. Something that is on earth, and it is like those who are evil and hate, lie, cheat, steal, sin, seem to get away with it. They're not punished. In the same way that we have those who are good, kind, honest, right, seem to go through life unrewarded. But I want to encourage you, don't be fooled. There will be a time when everyone's going to have to give an account and will receive their reward. For those who follow Jesus, it's going to be everlasting life in heaven with Jesus. For those who haven't followed him, that have rebelled against him and done their own thing, it's going to be eternal punishment in hell. So as we see the parable of the weeds, Jesus is the one who sorts out who's good and who is not. So let's spend our time on living for Jesus, encouraging others to live for Jesus, and leave the eternal decisions in his capable hands. I hope you enjoyed this time.